Oh, my teeth are wonky as shit, but it is what it is.
I think it's just my face that's wonky. I think my teeth are all right. My face
Yeah,
just.
hasn't grown into them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I quite like just doing that anyway. Any news?
Any news? No news. None.
I got news.
You've got news. You've got news. You've got
We're
great news.
engaged.
Oh my gosh, that when that came through, I was absolutely buzzing.
I know.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I was
No.
absolutely terrified.
Yeah, I
It
bet you
was
was.
the scariest thing that I've ever done in my
Yeah.
life.
Did you plan the shit out of it though?
I did. And I had the help of like the kids and Claire's mum and Claire's sister. And my sister was helping all the way from France,
Oh, bless her.
planning everything. But yeah, it was just one of those things where, yeah, I was like, oh man, I've just got to do it. And I wanted to do it at sunset. And it's like the sun was like, I'm going to choose now to move the fastest that I've ever moved. And it was like, ooh, like that. And I was like, oh God,
Oh God.
get on the beach. But yeah,
Yeah,
no, it was good.
gosh.
It was good.
Stressful. That's not for me.
Mm-mm.
Not for
I
me.
didn't think it was for me either, but I thought, you know, the whole corny thing of I'm only ever going to do this once.
Yeah.
And I wanted it for Claire more than for me. But yeah, she had when she realised what was happening, she had this pure look of absolute terror.
Uh-huh.
And she was like, oh my God, no.
Oh God.
I think she sort of grabbed my hand and went, oh God, when she realised what was happening. And I went, just shut up and let me do it. Morning.
Morning. It's a Sunday morning as well.
It is.
Never record on a Sunday.
I was
Well,
doing
that's
lots
because
of
somebody went
notes.
on holiday. That's why.
Don't know what you mean. Cool.
All
Well,
right. Get cracking.
today my story is called This Little Piggy.
Yeah. Not Little Miss Piggy as I've
Not
read it.
not Little Miss Piggy. Yeah, I kind of ruined the suspense on that. I was like, did you see the title? And you were like, yeah, Little Miss Piggy. I was like, yeah, no.
No.
No,
This
it's
is
not
why
that.
no, that's why we don't record on a Sunday.
Yeah,
Brain doesn't work.
so thirsty. Well, actually, I'm not going to be drinking all the way through this because I'm nearly finished my drink.
I've got 2 drinks.
Oh, do you know what? I was going to do that.
Double up. Well, I've got my my tea, but it's like a lemony gingery type tea thing. And then because that's a heap of shit, I've got some juice to wash it down with.
Nice. Mystery bottle. It's not urine.
Also, you
Not
shouldn't be having
urine.
alcohol at 9:50 on a Sunday.
It's not alcohol. Why would you assume
Well,
it's
you've taken the label
alcohol?
off.
It's ginger beer, actually. Okay, well, I've got that in it if it's an emergency. So this is a story that's based in Canada. And it's about a man called Robert William Pickton. Are you familiar?
I think I am familiar. I know
think
the
you are.
name. Yeah.
So it's about Robert William Pickton, or Willie Pickton, who was like the pig man. That's what he was called. So,
Pigman Pickton.
Pigman Pickton. So this story is about him and the women that he murdered. So let's start with a history of the area so that we can kind of set the scene. You can get a feel for what it was like in a day of being Piggy Pickton. So Low Track was the name given to the poorest neighbourhood in British Columbia. Well, actually, the whole of Canada. It was the poorest neighbourhood in the whole of Canada. Vancouver's Skid Row. And the cold heart of this neighbourhood is an intersection of Main and Hastings, nicknamed Pains and Wastings. by the
Oh.
poor souls that lived there.
dear.
Yeah, pain and wastings. The population of addicts in this area is estimated between 5 and 10,000 at any given time, with heroin and crack cocaine being the drugs of choice. The area has the highest HIV infection rate in North America, with 1 in 4 people testing positive. Most of the female residents were funding their drug habits with prostitution, roaming the streets day and night, with their skeletal frames as a testament to the drugs they so desperately seek. Drug cartels and gangs flood the streets with cheap narcotics, encouraging the runaways and lost souls to come and stay. Destitution and violence is very much a way of life there. So you get the idea. It's not a holiday destination. Well, certainly not a happy one anyway.
For some.
For some it might be. Low Track is a 10 square block of urban wasteland, slums and rundown hotels frequented by sex workers and drug addicts and the people who prey on them as well. The whole area is littered with garbage or rubbish, syringes and used condoms. Low Track is also home to the infamous Kiddie Stroll, a street with prostitutes as young as 11.
Oh my God.
Oh, rank in it. In 1998, the average was 1 death per day from drug overdose. And these were dangerous streets, but there were other dangers on the streets. People were disappearing without trace. And by the year 2000, more than 24 had gone, vanished. A local cop, Constable Dave Dixon, started noticing that the working girls on his beat were just regularly going missing and just disappearing. Regular girls that suddenly he just wasn't seeing anymore. He knew a lot of these girls, checked up on them and would regularly go in and check in. And they were just suddenly not there anymore, just non-existent. He checked local shelters and the places where they cashed their welfare checks. And when he did that, he found that the accounts had all been closed because their checks hadn't been collected. And obviously that rang like huge
warning
bells for him, because he was like, hang on a minute. If
they live for those welfare checks.
Yeah, exactly. If they're not, it's all about money. So if they're not collecting their welfare checks, there's something seriously wrong. So he started making a list. On his list was Marnie Lee Frey, last seen August 1997. Kerry Koski, last seen January 98. Inga Hall, last seen February 98. Sarah DeVries, age 28, last seen April 98. And the list goes on. And very quickly, he'd got up to 31 names on his list where he was like, nobody has seen these girls. They haven't collected their checks, nothing. So he reported his suspicions to his superiors in June 98. But even though they checked the statistics and they showed a dramatic increase in number of women that had disappeared, most of the police in charge were reluctant to investigate, saying that there was no crime scene, there was no bodies. Drug addicts and sex workers often moved around and, you know, disappeared and then reappeared somewhere else. And they also said that they were super good at getting away from the police, you know, and hiding from the police and keeping themselves out of the, you know, spotlight sort of thing. So the cutbacks were brutal and the police just didn't have a budget for cases without like bodies, basically. You know, if there wasn't a body laying at the side of the road that they had to investigate, just leave it alone. That was their attitude.
Don't give yourself more work.
Yeah, they were like, you know, yeah, you might not have seen them lately, but what's the problem, kind of thing. Nonetheless, a few police, including Dave Dixon, started with this list, and they started getting another list together of possible suspects that could be related to a lot of these girls going missing. If it was possible that there was one person behind the disappearance of these girls, sex workers, who could it be? Who had a history of violence against sex workers? And unfortunately, there were hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
There were hundreds of people in this area that had all had, they ticked the box on every single bit of criteria that they had. Wayne Leng, an old customer and then like friend of one of the sex workers who had gone missing, Sarah DeVries, had started his own investigation. He was like, I'm not just gonna let the police brush this under the carpet kind of thing. So he started doing his own thing. And the reason that he did this was because Wayne was actually madly in love with Sarah, and not you, other Sarah, the other one. And although she didn't feel the same about him, they had become close friends and they would speak regularly, and he would pick her up and drop her off and things like that. When Sarah disappeared, Wayne was absolutely beside himself. He printed hundreds of flyers and put them up everywhere. But after several months, this had yielded nothing but prank calls, until one day he had a call from a man called Bill Hiscox. And Bill had a pal called Lisa Yelds. There's a lot of names and a lot of people, but Bill Hiscox phoned Wayne and he said, I've got this friend called Lisa Yelds, and she was friends with a guy called Willie Pickton. And she used to clean up, tidy the farm, that kind of thing, where Willie lived. And it was him and his brother that lived on this pig farm. And she said to Bill, she said that she started finding sort of weird stuff on the farm. She'd find women's IDs, women's clothes, things like that. But more than just, the odd one that you'd think,
Someone's left that there.
Maybe one of his friends has left that there. She started finding a lot. And when she mentioned this to Willie, she was like, look, there's like several sort of IDs of some girl, some woman. There's some women's clothes here. Apparently he said to her, just burn it all. She was like, huh. And that bothered her.
Red flag.
Yes, she was just like, burn it. Why would you burn like all these IDs and things like that?
Yeah, you try and get it back to the person.
Yeah. And I mean, coincidence that there's like, more than the odd one or two. And she said to Bill, quote, I think this is where all the women are going. So Bill was like, ding, ding, ding. So Bill said, one of them had to report it, and Lisa said, well, I'm not going to. So Bill said, whatever the consequences, I'm gonna have to report this. So Bill did, and then the police said that they were gonna look into it. When they questioned Lisa, she denied saying anything or like seeing anything. She was, no, I haven't seen any IDs.
Lisa.
Because
Lisa.
I know, but do you know why?
She was scared.
No, she didn't like police. What a twat.
What did she think was going to happen?
She just didn't like police. So she was like, why should I help them out? But it's like, come on. If there's women going missing, like do it.
Not really to help the police.
Do it for them, Lisa. Yeah. Do it for them. But she didn't. And without any evidence, what Bill was saying to the police was just hearsay. Because obviously he was like, she told me that Willie told her that, and the police went to her and she was like, no.
Didn't say any of that.
What you talking about? Yeah.
Big liar Billy?
Yeah. So she was like, nah, that old Bill. Oh, old Bill. So yeah. So anyway, that didn't come to anything. So the list of women that were disappearing kept going up. So Willie Pickton, who is he, you ask?
I did, yeah.
I thought you did. So on the 24th of October, 1949, Robert William Pickton was born to Leonard Francis Pickton and Louise Helen Pickton. Right, let me tell you about the Picktons. You're not eating at the moment, are you?
Yeah.
No.
For once.
Good. Anyone who's having their breakfast or anything like that, just maybe pause it and finish what you're eating, or because it just grosses me out, this kind of thing. But the Picktons already had a daughter called Linda, who was 1 year older than Robert, or Willie Piggy, as he was always known. And the following year they had David, and this gets a little bit confusing because David was always known as Piggy. That's what his nickname became. Not like from his family, but from everybody else that knew him. They used to call him Piggy, and they used to call Willie, although he was known as like the pig man, they used to call him Ratface.
Oh, for God's sake.
I know. I mean, they were a beautiful family. But David was
well liked in the neighbourhood.
Yeah,
you could
yeah,
tell.
exactly. David was more like his looks wise. David was more like his mum, who was like very sort of big and round and piggy like. And Willie, although Willie was closer to his mum, he was physically more like his dad. So he was very like sort of slim, and he had very sort of slim, pointy features and rat-like face. So he used to get called Rat Face. They were lovely.
Kids are cruel, aren't they?
Yeah, I know. And accurate. So the family had a farm where they had pigs. They also had some other like cattle and livestock and things like that. But it was mainly pigs. They said that they were a pig farm, and Willie used to tell people, if they said, "What do you do? Like, what do you do for a living?" He used to go, "I'm just a pig man." That's what he did. Regardless of all the other things that he did, he always just said that he was a pig man. So they had this farm, which was predominantly pigs, in Coquitlam in British Columbia. The farm's main business was pigs. They also had some horses, cattle, poultry, and all of the animals were able to roam freely, which is lovely. However, they would also roam freely through the house, in the house, and they would also poop.
Defecate. And
the defecation was not cleaned up.
Oh, so they rank.
Yeah. There were very few baths and things like that were had by family members. Maybe one every couple of weeks, that kind of thing. But the animals would just mess everywhere. It never got cleaned up. There were no showers and baths that they would have. The eldest child, Linda, actually went to live with relatives in nearby Vancouver, luckily for her. And a pig farm was hardly a fitting place for a young lady to grow up, according to Louise and Leonard, who were the parents. And this left Robert and his younger brother David to work the farm from a very young age. Louise was a hard, eccentric and abrasive woman with a loud mouth and, by all accounts, a complete workaholic. She single-handedly ran the family's meat business, BC Frosted Food Bank, and put the well-being of the pigs above the boys. Demanding that they work, slopping and caring for the pigs most of their days. Often the brothers had to come home from school early to feed the pigs, which gave them some respite, to be honest, from the bullying that they got at school. I mean, can you imagine? Like, the boys were taunted. Willie was given the nickname Ratface. They both got called Stinky Piggy. At school.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, both of them were bullied. They both went to school unwashed and unkempt, with their dirty clothes always smelling of pig manure.
Oh God.
And if ever there's a manure, the piggy one has
Yeah.
to be the worst because it's rank in it.
Yeah.
I mean, at least with like horse manure, it's like it's hay, isn't it? But pig manure, pigs will literally eat anything that they're
Yeah.
given. So who knows?
Yeah, they do. They just stink, don't they?
I know, little smelly
It's the
piggies.
mud as well. The mud and it mixed with the
Poop.
piss and yeah, that
Yes.
piss.
Yeah.
Just
I
it
mean,
crumbles.
pigs as a whole, like, if you've got a couple of pigs or you've got like a lot of space, or pigs aren't smelly, but all all poop smells, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like all poop is disgusting, apart from mine. Yeah. So the boys would have to come home early sometimes and sort the pigs out. Their mother did not have an issue with the fact that they were stinking and they didn't bath or clean or anything like that. She didn't have an issue with it because she didn't either. So she was very smelly. Locals describe Louise Pickton as a short woman with little hair on her head, but a lot of hair on her chin.
On a chinny chin
On
chin.
her chinny chin. Yeah, apparently she had quite a healthy beard going on and kind of balding on the top.
If I'm gonna be buying my meat from somewhere, it's not gonna be from smelly bearded women.
It's not, is it? I
No.
know. She had a mouth of rotting and missing teeth.
Oh, grim.
She wore a dressing gown over men's jeans and welly boots.
Yeah, I see that. The
Got
dressing
got
gown.
vision? Visualize that.
You know what I'm
Um,
envisioning? You
mm,
know, Chicken Run. Well, I'm sure she comes out in a dressing gown with wellies on at one point. The really horrible woman.
yeah. She makes
The
pies,
pies.
doesn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was like that mixed with something from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's what, yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking. But strangely enough, considering that like the whole family were like disgusting, unwashed, missing teeth and all that, wellies and dressing gowns, Willie actually had really good teeth, which is weird, I think. But every like 3 months, he'd book himself into the dentist and he'd go and have his teeth all cleaned and checked. And
Oh, maybe he
but
didn't
that,
like
but
his
that's it.
mums and was like, yeah,
I know
took pride in his teeth.
it
So he's like
is
that.
weird.
Oh, I mean, I smell everywhere and I'm rank, but not in the mouth.
Yeah, it's
Oral
weird though, isn't it?
hygiene.
I
Yeah.
think none of them cared about like any side of it, and then just rat face. He thought, I'm not having my rat teeth go to waste. Get my rat teeth done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who knows? Willie apparently had an actual fear of showers. Like it was reported that he was scared of having a shower. So he only ever, if he did wash, he would only ever like bath, but it was not often at all. Despite everything, Willie loved his mother very much, and he described the two of them as peas in a pod. He spoke of his mother saying that she had a strong mind and very strong willpower. Unfortunately for Willie, Louise died from cancer in 1979, just 2 years after Willie's dad died. And Willie was her sole carer. He bathed her, which was like more than she ever did for him. And he would change her, so because she became incontinent, and he did everything for her right up until her death. And when she died, Willie was absolutely devastated. Willie told a friend that when he was like, when he would get bullied and he'd get chased by people and things like that, he would actually crawl inside one of the gutted animal carcasses. Blah. And then obviously he wouldn't bath or anything like
That's
that.
so grim.
So he would be not only covered in poop, but he would be covered in
Intestines.
intestines and blood and stuff. And then, just let it dry off and crisp up and
That's so grim.
get on with his day. When Willie was 12, he saved up $35 of his own money and he bought a pet calf.
Oh,
I mean, you would, wouldn't you? They're cute as fuck.
$35 though. Absolutely.
No. He would play with the calf and he would say that that was his best friend. And he wanted to keep it on the farm with him forever. So he had every intention of growing up with this calf. After only a few weeks, he returned from school one day and was unable to find it.
Oh.
Oh no. Willie wandered around looking everywhere for it. And his parents said, "Why don't you check the barn?" Willie thought, well, she couldn't be down there because that's where we slaughter all the animals.
Oh no.
So he went down and he didn't think he would find her down there. And he peeped round, looked into the back window, and to his absolute horror, he found his calf had been slaughtered and was hanging from a hook on one of the beams, and all her innards had been cleaned out.
Oh, that's so sad.
That's really sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Willie was absolutely devastated, like absolutely heartbroken.
Yeah.
And he refused to speak to his family for some time.
Blame him.
They eventually sort of said, "All right, well, we'll buy you another one."
What was the point of killing that one then?
I know. And he said, "No, mate,
That won't be the same.
done." And he said the calf had been his friend and another one would not be the same.
Yeah.
And according to people that knew him, this was something he never got over.
Didn't you wonder if things would have been different had that not happened?
I do actually. I do think about that when I was reading that, because I read not all of the book because it's a huge book, but I read as much as I could on this book about Willie Pickton. And that came up time and time again as I was reading through it. And I thought, I wonder how much damage that did actually do to him. I wonder if that was something that pushed him over the edge.
Yeah, just like ate away at him.
Yeah. But Willie said that at that moment, he realised, and quote from Willie, "We're not here forever. We are here for the time we are here for. Life goes around, and you are only here today and you're not here tomorrow." So, I mean, it sounds like that did do some lasting damage.
What's the point? I'll just do whatever I want to do.
Exactly. At 14, Willie dropped out of school and started working more on the farm. This was the time that his father, Leonard, decided to teach Willie how to become a butcher and how to properly slaughter the animals. Again, in hindsight, probably not the right thing for him. But Willie loved it, and it was something that he really, really enjoyed. But it was said that he slaughtered as many as 24 pigs in a day, which is
really.
In 1963, the family actually moved from Doe's Hill to Dominion Avenue, where they had room to increase the pig herd from 200 to 700 piggy pigs. They actually moved the actual house, their disgusting house.
Oh, up and picked it up.
They picked it up, put it on a flatbed, and moved it to Dominion Avenue.
That's crazy.
And I mean,
you can even do that.
I know.
I want to move, but I want to keep the house.
I know. And
that's not a thing here.
They literally picked it up and moved it as it was. It's still moved, being covered in filth and animal feces.
Grim.
Yeah. A neighbour who had popped over once was enough, said the house was so disgusting. There was like just a dirty mattress on the floor. There was no furniture. There was poop and filth on the walls, floor, and the ceiling. There was flies everywhere. Blah. And this is also a good time to point out that the Picktons were not a poor family. Like, they had money. They'd sold off, they used to sell off bits and pieces of the land, and they made a lot of money from doing that, because they would sell it off for like thousands here, thousands there. Which leaves us to conclude that they were obviously happy living like it.
Yeah.
They had the money to make things different, but they didn't. In the 60s, people generally didn't have big freezers, but meat was really popular. So Louise, she was a super savvy, smart businesswoman, she saw a gap in the market and she started B&C Frosted Food Bank. And she bought hundreds of large industrial freezers to keep the meat in and sell to customers. And then she would offer storage for the meat.
Oh, great idea.
Smart, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, even though she was, by all accounts, pretty grim looking and bearded, and she had a screeching voice, apparently. But yeah, super savvy. She bought loads of freezers. She would say to people, I'll sell you a whole load of meat and I'll put it in freezer 4, and you can just come and take what you need for that week or whatever.
Great idea.
Good idea. So the locals would call the place the Meat Locker. And eventually Louise changed the name to B&C Lockers. In 1967, David, Willie's brother, got his driving license and took their father's red pickup truck out. And nobody knows what actually happened, but David ended up hitting a 14-year-old boy called Timothy Barrett. And David immediately knew that he had seriously injured Timothy. And he literally just left the truck and Timothy and ran back up the road to the house. And his mother, Louise, just literally stopped what she was doing when he was like telling her. She stopped what she was doing and she went to the scene of the accident with David in tow. She looked Timothy over and she decided that she would roll him over and push him down into a deep ditch that ran alongside Dominion Avenue. And then she just calmly walked back to the farm.
Oh my God.
I know, psycho. David was scared, so he thought that he would try and get the truck repaired. And the mechanic that usually helps the Picktons with their vehicles knocked the dent out. I mean, hideous. Knocked the dent out and replaced the broken indicator light. But he refused to touch up the paintwork because David had said to him, like, you need to repaint that dent and all that. And the mechanic says, from his point of view, he was like, all of the Picktons' vehicles were dented and scratched, and they were like, all their vehicles were a complete mess. Why would David make such a thing about getting this one dent not only fixed but painted as well? And he was like,
something dodgy is going on there.
I'm not going to paint it because it will make it look odd, you know. And so in the end, David was like, fine, just leave it as it is then. Off he went. Meanwhile, Timothy Barrett's parents, Philip and Lois, were frantically looking for their son. And at 1 a.m, when they were still unable to find him, they reported him missing to the police. The next morning, while searching the local area for their son, Philip Barrett, who was actually out with the Picktons. The Picktons were like out helping them.
Searching. Oh, I hate that.
Helping them search as well. But Philip Barrett, Timothy's dad, suddenly spotted his son's shoe at the side of the road, and he ran over and he saw a trail of blood leading to the deep ditch at the side of the road. And unfortunately, there in the water, he saw his son's lifeless body. 14 years old.
Yeah. And
Awful.
he might even well have been saved had they just called someone.
Funny you should say that. Philip Barrett, Timothy's dad, apparently just collapsed and was just howling in heartbreak. After the police finally removed Timothy's body from the dirty water in the ditch, he was sent for an autopsy, which showed that his cause of death was actually drowning.
Mm-hmm.
Although he had suffered a fractured skull and a dislocated pelvis, the coroner said that these injuries would absolutely not have killed him. And the fact that he was unconscious in the water had caused him to drown.
Yeah.
So he was alive. He would have survived the accident.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was face down. He obviously couldn't move, so he just drowned. 3 days after Timothy's funeral, a new Westminster coroner, J.A. Bard, filed a report listing the cause of death as drowning. But the note said that the serious injuries that were sustained were consistent with a vehicle hitting him. The mechanic saw the news report of Timothy's death and phoned the police to say that David had brought his truck in with damage that seemed consistent with having hit someone. And the police searched the farm and matched the paintwork to Timothy's body. In March 1968, the coroner's jury listened to the evidence of several people, including the mechanic and the police, and the verdict was accidental death, but a criminal inquiry was opened. David had to attend juvenile court, but he was only charged with leaving the scene of an accident. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no evidence that he pushed him into the water, is there? There's evidence that he hit him with a car and then left.
Yeah.
There's no evidence of
anything
else.
Willie told the story to a friend years later of how Louise's chilling involvement came to light. So yeah, no one apart from David knew that that's what had happened.
Yeah.
They said he'd been hit by a car, but yeah, there is more to that story, but it's just such a long tangent.
Mm-hmm.
After the deaths of their parent, the children inherited the farm and sold off some of the land to real estate developers, earning a total of over 5.1 million Canadian dollars. But the farm remained a creepy-looking place with a large, vicious 600-pound, which is nearly 43 stone, boar.
Whoa.
Which ran around with the dogs patrolling the perimeter.
Oh my God.
I don't even think I've seen anything like that. 43 stone boar. Both of the brothers tried their hands at other businesses. David sold topsoil from the farm, which was disgusting and contaminated. And he also started doing some small time demolition jobs, things like that. He bought some trailers for the demolition job. And after the brothers had a huge fight, Willie actually ended up living in one of these trailers on the farm when David kicked him out of the house. So, honestly, so weird. Willie bought lots of vehicles, which he just left sitting around the farm, falling to pieces. But he also started operating a chop shop for local Hells Angels, taking in stolen cars and dismantling them for parts, that kind of thing. They had quite a lot, by all accounts, they had quite a lot of involvement with the Hells Angels. The farm was still operating as a meat business, which was sliding into even more of a disgusting mess because David was churning up all the ground with these lorries for his topsoil business, and Willie was dragging these vehicles and old cars and everything, dragging them all in, raking up all the mud and all that. And don't forget, the animals were literally just wandering everywhere. Yeah, so pig farm was there. The brothers decided to hire some help. So they would hire like local kind of dropouts to work on the farm. They used the Hells Angels to kind of threaten the workers, apparently, into stealing cars and things like that. And these workers that were down and outs very rarely got paid.
Oh.
the farm slowly started becoming a place where criminals and drugs were commonplace. Huge parties and women were a frequent sight. David actually married and had 2 children. But his wife took the kids and did one.
Yeah.
Don't blame her. Everyone's account, it seems like David was actually not as nice as Willie, oddly. Like David was quite rude and quite spiteful to people. Like a lot of people that would go to the farm, they were like, if David took a dislike to you, which he took a dislike to a lot of people, he'd be quite nasty to you. Whereas Willie kind of didn't come across like that. Willie was a little bit more kind, and it's like Willie wanted to help people, whereas David didn't. David was all about money and that kind of thing, and Willie was a little bit, came across that he wanted to help people, not for long. Rumours started spreading that the Picktons were making snuff films at the farm, and they were selling meat that wasn't pork, unknown meat. On top of this, a worker from a local rendering plant. Do you know what a rendering plant is?
No.
Okay. Well, I didn't either until I started looking into this. So a rendering plant is basically where if you were going to slaughter and process and butcher a pig, for example, you would be left with like hair and bone and teeth and stuff like that. So you would put all of that in like the leftovers, basically. Yeah. So you take the meat that you need, and anything that's left over, you would put in a barrel and then send the barrel to a rendering plant, and they would then process it
and make black pudding.
No, they would make things. I like black pudding. And they would make things like they would use oil for like makeup. And I mean, I don't use makeup, but they would like candles and things like that, like oils and sort of waxy materials and things like that for like all that old shit. So that's what a rendering plant is. So it processes the leftovers of animals. So a worker from the local rendering plant had gone to the farm to collect some buckets from Willie, and he noticed that there were some large lumps of meat in the bucket. And this is a really unusual thing, because anyone who's like butchering meat wouldn't put lumps of meat in there. It's just not something that would happen. So that kind of stuck with him, because he was like, that's weird. They're a good meat company.
Yeah.
Why would they be throwing big lumps of meat? Willie sometimes dropped off his buckets at the rendering plant as well when he couldn't be bothered to get the other people to do it for him, which involved him driving right through the centre of Lowtrack. In 1996, the brothers registered a non-profit charity called, you're going to love this, this is the best name ever. So their non-profit charity was called the Piggy Palace Good Times Society.
Oh my God.
Saying that it was to organise and manage events, dances and functions to support worthy causes and worthy groups. And obviously, none of it went to charity.
Yeah.
The Piggy Palace, and it was named so because it was Dave, the younger brother, who set it up, and his nickname was Piggy.
Yeah.
So everyone used to call him Piggy. So when they thought about naming it, Dave said, it's my palace.
Yeah.
So let's call it Piggy's Palace. So it was called Piggy's Palace. Good Time Society. It had a big dance floor. It had a kitchen and a barbecue. It had seating for around 150 people, but there was a lot more that went. Hideous. It was a great place for live bands, music, drinking, drugs, crime, sex, prostitution. Almost immediately after Piggy Palace opened, the brothers and Linda, because she was still named on the ownership of the land, even though like she wasn't there, all got taken to court for zoning violations due to the building being for agricultural use and not an event hall. The events were, in fact, huge wild raves featuring sex workers from Vancouver's seedy backstreets. Notorious criminals were in attendance, and the Hells Angels became kind of a permanent fixture there. That was their hangout. That was their place. The Piggy Palace was a huge converted slaughterhouse on the edge of the farm at 953 Dominion Avenue. And local residents were furious as crowds in well excess of 1,500 to 2,000 people would often attend these parties. And these parties were wild and super loud. In 1998, the brothers threw a huge New Year's Eve party. And even though they had been under growing pressure from officials regarding the zoning permits, the Piggy Palace was zoned for agricultural use, and the brothers were now neglecting their pigs as well, in favour of their new piggy party hobby.
Mm-hmm.
After the New Year's Eve party, they were served with an injunction preventing all future parties and giving the police power to arrest and remove any persons on the property to attend an event. Didn't stop them.
No, if there's like 1,500 people going.
Exactly. The following year, the society was stripped of its non-profit status and then disbanded in January 2000 for failure to file mandatory financial reports. During the time the Piggy Palace was open, Willie had been in trouble with the police for attacking a prostitute.
Oh, Willie.
So I'm just going to tell you about that attack. The sex worker in this attack now has her name protected and goes by her street name, which was Stitch.
Okay.
So I shall use that name. It was on Saturday, the 22nd of March, 1997, when Stitch was working in the sex trade and she met Willie Pickton. Well, she kind of didn't like him right from word go. So again, girls, trust your instincts, please. Anyway, she was repulsed by the stench and filth of Willie and his pickup truck. She said it was, well, not her words, but she said it was minging.
Yeah, but he had nice teeth.
But he had nice teeth. And that's the thing. They did actually pick up on things like that. So they would say, like, strangely enough, he had great teeth.
Yeah.
Like, so it was always something. I wonder if he used the same toothpaste as I did.
Yeah, maybe.
As I said, she was repulsed by the stench of him and his pickup truck. But unfortunately, she was desperate for money. And he offered her $100 for an hour and a half. So she agreed to go with him to the farm, unfortunately. When she got into the van, she saw a woman's bra and asked who it belonged to. And Willie said it was just another date he had last weekend. The many dates.
Yeah, I can't remember which one.
Yeah. Although she started finding him creepy, it was kind of too late for her to do anything about it. So she was just like, all right, well. Another thing that she noticed that he'd removed the door handles from the inside of the truck. I mean, if ever there's a red flag, you'd be like, where are
the door handles gone?
I'd be like that.
I don't know if I'd got in and see that there's no door handles and there's like bras and stuff, I think I'd have just been like,
well, this is it.
Time.
I had a good innings. Oh, I tell you what, I think I'd be kicky.
Yeah.
I don't know why I think that, but I just feel like I'd be kicky. I think I'd be like putting my back to the door and then kicking at him.
Yeah.
I reckon I'd be super kicky.
Like a kangaroo.
Yeah, I would, yeah. Yeah, my legs would be doing that. I'd be like that. My legs would be going. Come at me. Kick ya. Right, I've lost where I was. Blah, blah, blah.
She noticed that there was no door handles.
So yeah, so she went with it, and well, she didn't have much choice. So they arrived at the Pickton farm, and she oh, you okay? I do coffee. They arrived at the Pickton farm, and he took her to his trailer. They had thanks. And in a room that had nothing but a sleeping bag and another red flag, a large roll of clear plastic.
Oh my God.
I know. It's like something at a Dexter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So nothing in this room, in his trailer, nothing but a sleeping bag and a roll of clear plastic. After they had thanks, she asked to use his phone, and he pretty much just said no. He said, "There's a payphone down the road. I'll drop you off, and you can make a call there." She was like, "Huh." Not overly happy. After this conversation, Willie kind of came up behind her and he snapped a handcuff round her wrist, and that was when she became Kate
Kicky.
Kangaroo.
Yeah.
She got super kicky, and she went into like kicky mode. She fought violently. This was a brutal fight for her life. She managed to kind of, in the book it says about her, she remembers seeing a kitchen knife, like quite a large kitchen knife in the kitchen. So she ends up kind of maneuvering herself to the kitchen. And anyway, she ends up getting hold of this knife, and there's an all-out brawl with this knife. At one point, Willie gets the knife off of her, and he actually stabs her 4 times. He stabs her twice in her abdomen, but big stabby slashes in her abdomen. He stabs her once in her chest, which punches her lung, and he stabs her in her left arm. During the fight, even after all this, she manages to get the knife, and she stabs him. So she gets a good couple of stabs, like proper stabs as well. And she manages, even though she's been properly like stabbed, she manages.
Is this where she got her name from, Stitch? Afterwards,
maybe, yeah, maybe. Yes, good point.
Needed a whole lot of stitches,
a whole load of them. But she legs it, and she manages to get to the road where, and this is like 1:45 in the morning. She sees a motorist, Maria Mills, and she sees her staggering along. And I think she was actually with her husband as well. So it's like a man and woman that see her, because they actually say to her, don't stab us, because she's still got the knife.
Oh.
So she sort of goes, oh, yeah, throws the knife, and she's like, please help. And they noticed that she had a handcuff on, and that's what made them think, no,
she's been attacked.
Someone's done this to her, because why else would you have a handcuff on? I mean, unless you were actually a prisoner, I suppose, and you just escaped and killed the prison guard. There is that. But anyway, they thought they saw she needed help. But when they saw her, she was staggering along the road with her own intestines dragging along behind her.
Oh God.
There.
Nope.
So it was a significant stab to her belly.
Yeah. I think that's why she's probably now got the name Stitch.
Yeah. Well, it could have been intestine, so oh, Stitch is better. But they took her to the hospital anyway. Police then became even more suspicious when another person arrived at the hospital with a quite extensive stab wound. It was Willie Piggy.
Mm-hmm.
He drove himself there in spite of actually a single stab wound and a few small cuts. And he was like, oh, ever so badly hurt.
Oh, wow.
Oh, ouchie. And the police obviously sort of said, yes, you can be treated. We just need to, empty your pockets. Emptied his pockets, and there was a flipping handcuff key. So
Suspicious.
they took it 2 beds down, put it in her,
Click.
Click, and it obviously it fitted, and they were like, we're going to charge you with attempted murder and aggravated assault and unlawful confinement. But unfortunately, he was released on a $2,000 bond. And ultimately, Stitch was a known drug addict and sex worker. And the police decided that her testimony was too unreliable. Because,
right, yeah.
you know, your intestines could have been out before.
Yeah. You've put that hanger on yourself and then planted the key.
Yeah, exactly. God. So the case was dismissed.
Oh, come on, the police.
I know the police.
Come on.
I know. Willie Pickton saw himself as a bit of a Robin Hood figure and often took in waifs and strays. In all fairness, I mean, not fairness, because I don't need to be fair to him because I am aware of what he's done. But he started out with the best intentions for the most part. He could have been such a good guy, and it just suddenly, like, there's a lot in the book, and there's a lot that talks about how he was with people that were close to him, you know, and he had a few friends, and they said that he really honestly used to make an effort. And when the Piggy Palace first opened, apparently he'd washed his hair and like combed all his hair back. Hair back.
These are all normal human things that
I know.
You should give him credit for because he finally washed.
I know, but he did all of that.
A great guy.
And he put on a new shirt. He'd got new jeans. Everything was nice and clean. And he went to like the opening of the Piggy Palace, and he said he really wanted to find a girlfriend that he could like marry and he could care for, and they would have, he said to his friends, he wanted to be normal. And do you know, when he turned up, everyone ripped the shit out of him. They took the piss out of him, and they were like, oh, who do you think you are? And all this. And it was like his friends just saw him go, why bother?
Yeah.
Like, he really tried to make an effort. He used to give money to sex workers and things and say to them, just try and stay away from drugs. Let's try and get you clean. And there was a part in his life where he really genuinely tried to be a good person. And I honestly, genuinely believe that. I think something or some things gnawed away at him. I think there was certain things that happened in his life that broke something in him or twisted something in him. I don't know what it was, but I honestly believe that Willie Pickton started out and he could have been a good person. He could have been.
Yeah, but then he chose to murder people, so...
Then he chose to be an absolute demon. So, yeah, but this is one of the things that perplexes me about people that kill. Where is that moment? Where is that blip that changes from being a normal person or a non-murderer anyway, to suddenly you take that step and you then become a murderer? So
no, I think so. We've been watching a documentary recently, and it's called The Subway Guy, and it's about the guy that was like did all the Subway commercials and things like that, and he went round to all the schools, motivational speaker, and helping all the kids and speaking to them and everything. Absolute pedophile he was.
Yeah.
So I don't think that he had any intentions of being helpful or wanted to start out and be like, oh yeah, I really want to help kids. He just wanted to be around kids because he's an absolute pedophile. And I think that probably the same with Willie Pickman, is that he was an absolute smelly murderer. Pickman.
Pickton. Stop saying Pickman.
He doesn't even deserve me to get his name right.
I don't know. I just...
Like, paedophiles on the internet They
I
go,
think
"Oh, you're 11. Well, maybe you should stay away from men. There's a lot of horrible men out there. I'm not one of them men. I'm a good guy." And then they're absolute pedophiles.
I think that's two different things. I think being a murderer and being a paedophile are very different. I think because you're not a murderer until you murder someone and then you're a murderer. Paedophiles can be paedophiles without doing anything to anyone. You can still be a paedophile without having to take that step. Do you know what I
No,
mean?
I meant like the intent behind it, where you're saying, "Oh, he's a really good guy, and he gave these prostitutes money and said stay away from men and try and be good." And
Mm.
I think that he didn't have that intention at all. That's a kind of grooming almost, isn't it? Like, I'm a
Yeah.
good guy, you can trust me, but actually it's not.
I just don't feel that he was. I don't think he was grooming people to, you know, until he was. But I think the beginning part of his life, I do believe that he had good intentions. And I think there were several a series of unfortunate events that had happened to him that pushed him that way. And I don't think that he was always like that. I think he turned into that, and I think he obviously made horrendous choices. But
Let's
I
listen to the
do.
rest of the story and then I'll decide.
So anyway, back from the digression, Willie Pickton saw himself as a bit of a Robin Hood figure, and he would often take in waifs and strays, convincing himself that he was helping them. He allowed them to stay at the farm. He supplied them with odd jobs for money, food, and shelter. And he did actually become a good friend to many of them. Others, not so much. Lynn Ellingson was down on her luck. She was an addict, and he invited her to live on the farm. And she was having a really rough time. She was living on the streets. And Lynn thought her luck was in. She ended up living on the farm. She would earn money to sit and be a secretary for a few hours, answering the phones, things like that. Happy days. Gina Houston was also one of Willie's good friends. Willie was kind to her. He was kind to her daughter. He would buy her daughter toys and anything that she would need. These women said that it was never a sexual thing. They would sometimes sleep in the same bed as Willie, and he wouldn't ever like try anything or anything like that. He was always, actually, surprisingly enough, he was an absolute gentleman. Willie was super in love with Gina, and the pair of them were really super close. They often spoke of the future and like, what if we got married? What would our life be like? And what sort of house they would have, you know, what it would look like. And Willie properly craved, like I said before, a normal life. He wanted to get married. He wanted to have a nice house. And Gina would say that he actually, when she would clean up like in the house and make things clean and tidy, she would make dinner for them, and she would make all the table nice and, you know, put tablecloth on there and that. And she said Willie absolutely loved it. Like he was all about it, you know, and it used to kind of inspire him to like go and have a bath and spruce himself up a little bit and things like that. However, one day he presented her with a ring, and she shunned him, and she said, she actually said, "What would I do with another goddamn ring?" So, I mean,
Fair
that,
enough.
you know, if Claire had said that,
It's a bit hurtful. Yeah, I don't
might,
think you'd have turned to murdering.
well, who knows? Might have pushed me over the edge. I might have shoved her right in that sea. I'd have been like, "Oh, what are you going to do with no goddamn ring? I'll show you what I'm going to do with another goddamn ring." Yeah, I'd have been fuming. Another close friend was Andy Bellwood, who was a recovering heroin addict, who was introduced to Willie by a friend of Gina Houston that he had met in rehab. He spent a lot of time with Willie doing odd jobs, fixing cars and that sort of thing. And they talked for hours, and they were good mates. One night, Andy was watching TV in the trailer, and Willie came in and sat on the corner of the bed and said, "Let's go get a hooker." And Andy said, no, I just want to watch telly. And Willie persisted that they should go and get Hooker. And then Willie reached under the mattress and pulled out a pair of handcuffs, a belt, and a length of wire. And he said to Andy, you know what I do with hookers? Andy was like, no.
Billy kill stab.
Is it something stabby? And Willie kind of did this whole weird reenactment for Andy. And he said that the woman would be like on all fours on the bed, as Willie said, doggy style. And Willie would stroke her hair and tell them, don't worry, it'll be all right. And he said he kind of almost went into this reenactment a little bit too much. And he said that that Willie was like continuously saying, it'll be all right. Don't worry, it'll be all right. It's all over now. And Andy said it properly creeped him out because he was like, it's all over now. What are you talking about? And then he motioned that he would move their arm round and put the cuffs on them and put the belt round their neck, and he would strangle them. And then he turned to Andy and said, do you know how much people bleed? You wouldn't believe how much they bleed. And I would hang them up in the barn and then I'd gut them. And he was like, okay, whatever. And a few days later, after this conversation, this weird reenactment had happened, two men came up to Andy while he was working and they said they wanted to have a chat. Andy thought, right. They then beat Andy within an inch of his life and accused him of stealing stuff from Willie's trailer. And Andy knew that this was a warning to keep shut about what Willie had told him a few nights before. Obviously, he didn't think that Willie was a serial killer, but he did believe that he would murder anyone that got in his way, kind of thing. Anyway, common sense told Andy that it was time for him to get out of there. And he boarded a ferry and left the farm and Willie behind. Days after Bellwood left, Illingson went with Willie downtown. That's one of his girl mates. So they went downtown and they picked up a hooker because Willie said, let's go and get a hooker. And she was like, all right. Believing it to be safe because there was another girl there, the sex worker agreed. And they went back to the trailer altogether. Illingson went off to her room. And later that evening, she came out of her room and the trailer was like in silence. And she thought, where is everyone? She looked around for Willie and she couldn't see him anywhere. And then down in the barn on the property, she could see the light was on. So she thought, oh, maybe they're down there.
Slaughter barn.
I wonder what they're doing. I'll go and see. So she made her way down to the barn, opened the door, walked in. The sight that greeted her was horrific. The woman they had been with just hours before was now hanging from a butcher's hook in front of her with her insides all cut out. Illingson was so shocked that when Willie grabbed her from behind and dragged her into the corner, she didn't know what was happening. Yeah. And Willie got in her face and he said, if you say anything, you will be hanging there next to her.
No, thank you.
Until the next episode.
Part 2.
Yeah, because there's lots more.
Oh, all right.
Surprise!
Yeah.
I know. I
Great
wasn't going to
job.
say anything. Oh, thank you. That was it. I apologize. That was longer than I thought, but
Yeah.
I think once I've edited it'll be fine.
Cool.
But yeah, so that's the part 1 of Piggy Pickton.
Yeah, great job. Well, we'll save the discussion then for the end because I've got some questions, but there's a part 2 yet, so
yeah, they may all be answered in part 2.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Great story so far.
Thanks.
If you have enjoyed listening to our episodes, make sure you rate us and leave us a review on whatever platform you are listening.
We absolutely love hearing from you guys. So you can also help support our show by donating to our Buy Me a Coffee link. We will make sure that you get a massive shout out and a big thank you in our next week's episode.
You can also follow us on social media at Perplexed Podcasts. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and if you want to see more videos and blooper reels, subscribe to our TikTok and YouTube channels.
You can also email us your stories at perplexedpodcasts@gmail.com.
And you can find all the relevant links in the episode descriptions. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. Why are you laughing at that? You're out of order. Girls support each other, you know. You're ruining this for me.
Further down, you can't see that bit.
I'm setting the scene for the area, and you're
Yeah, I
setting
know.
the tone for the podcast.
My feet are sweating.
Control yourself.
God, when you watch it back, you'll see.
No, I
That's
won't.
what you were doing.
No, I won't see that because I wasn't doing it. I was reading the words. Oh.